I let my brother get evicted, on purpose, and I watched it happen and didn't say a word. So yeah, go ahead and tell me I'm the worst person in the family. You wouldn't be the first. Okay, so background. My brother's name is Derek. He's 31, I'm 28. Growing up, Derek was always the one my parents pointed at and said, "Look at your brother. He got the car at 16. He got the college fund topped off. When he dropped out of his business degree after 2 semesters, my dad literally said, and I quote, he'll figure it out, he's got that entrepreneurial spirit." When I dropped AP chemistry because I was working 20 hours a week at a grocery store to save for my own tuition, I got a lecture about commitment. So, that's the vibe. Fast forward to about 2 years ago. Derek moves to a different city, chasing some vague plan involving a friend and a tech startup that never quite got named. He gets a nice apartment, he gets a social life. And about 4 months in, he calls me, not our parents, me, and says he's short on rent. Just this month, he says, just a bridge. I had some money saved. I said yes. I transferred $600 and felt like a decent sister. Except just this month, turned into every month for 14 months straight. Here's the thing, I want to be fair. Derek wasn't lying around doing nothing. He was actually working, bouncing between freelance gigs, genuinely trying. There were a couple of months where he paid me back partial amounts. He always had a reason. The full rent was short, a client fell through, a check bounced, a gig dried up. And he always said it like he was embarrassed, like he hated asking. That part I believed. But month 14, something shifted. I just had my own bad month, my car needed repairs, I had a medical bill land out of nowhere, and I was staring at my own account wondering how I was going to cover my own groceries. When Derek texted, "Hey, it's that time again, I'm really sorry, I'll get you back," I just sat there. I didn't answer right away. And while I was sitting there not answering, my mom called. And she mentioned, casually, the way you drop something you think is fine, that she and my dad had just lent Derek $3,000 2 months ago. For startup costs. $3,000, that nobody told me about, while I was sending 600 a month like clockwork. I called Derek, I said, "Hey, I heard about the money from mom and dad." He got quiet, then he said, "That was for the business, that's different." I said, "So the business money is separate from the rent money?" He said, "It's complicated, you don't really understand how startups work." And something in my chest just went cold. I said, "I think I'm done with the rent thing." He said, "What does that mean?" I said, "It means I'm not sending it this month." He went quiet again, then said I was being dramatic and that he just needed a little more time to stabilize. I said I hoped he'd stabilize, and I hung up. Here's where it gets complicated. Derek didn't stabilize, he missed rent. He got a notice. He called me crying, actually crying, saying he had 30 days and he didn't know what he was going to do. And I said I was sorry and I meant it, and I still didn't send the money. He ended up having to move out. He crashed with his friend for a few weeks and eventually moved back into our parents' house, which, honestly, probably where this was heading anyway. But that's beside the point. What happened next is why I'm even asking this question. My mom called me and she was furious, not at Derek, at me. She said I pulled the rug out and that I knew what I was doing and that if I'd just held on one more month, Derek's big client was about to come through. I said, "Mom, you've been saying that for over a year." She said, "He's your brother." Like that was the whole argument, and maybe for her it was. My dad sent a text, he's not a phone call person, that said, "Disappointed in how you handled this." That was it, 11 words. And Derek, a few days after he moved out, sent me a long message. Not angry, actually. More sad. He said he understood I was frustrated, but that he felt blindsided, that he would have figured something out if I'd given him more warning, and that he thought I did it to prove a point rather than because I actually couldn't afford it. Because, his words, "You never said you were struggling." And that part stung because he wasn't wrong. I never told him about my car or the medical bill. I just stopped. No real warning. So was I protecting myself or was I punishing him? I've been asking myself that for 6 weeks and I still don't have a clean answer. A few weeks later, I found out through my cousin that Derek's big client did actually come through, partial payment, not what he'd hoped, but real money. Probably wouldn't have covered back rent. Probably. But I don't actually know. So here I am. I paid my brother's rent for over a year. $8,400 if you're keeping count, I was. I never once asked my parents for help carrying that. And when I finally stopped, the family decided I was the problem. Meanwhile, the $3,000 my parents quietly handed over, no one's talking about that. No one's calling that a pattern. But Derek's right that I never told him I was struggling. I just cut it off. And yeah, maybe part of me wanted him to feel it. Maybe I was done being the quiet one who handles things while he gets to be the one with potential. So I don't know. Was I protecting my bank account or was I settling a score? Both. Is there a difference when the outcome's the same? So honestly, am I the problem here? Honestly, though, what would you have done? Comment below.